So friends, in our first section, we have completed our project configuration and our Mongo DB configuration, and we have configured our Git, and we have committed our code to the Git repository. And then after that, we did our TypeScript configuration, and after that, we have completed our route configuration, and we did created our collections, author and book. And after that, we have created models for author and book. And after that, we have configured our view engine EJS, and we have created our EJS templates. And then after that, we have done our layout configuration that is going to be common for our entire project. And after that, we did our styling and creation of header. Okay. Now further in this section, we are going to do the user registration. And once user is registered, then after that, we are going to do the sign in. And while user registration and sign in, we are going to do the field validation. We will see how to do the field validation. And once field validations are done, then after that, we will do our password encrypt and decrypt before saving it to the database. And once password encrypt and decrypt is done, and then after that, we are going to do the user authentication with JWT. Okay. So now let's start without much more wasting time on it. Now further, we are going to create the functionality for user registration, and then we will do for the user login. And then after that, we will use JWT tokens for our authentication purpose. So now let's start. I'm going to create a view folder as a users. Inside the users, I'm just going to create a new template file for the register.ejs. And in this register.ejs, I'm just going to create a form, and this form method would be post. And inside this form, I'm just going to create a container as div. And inside this container, I have to give a header. So let's create another div here and give a h2 inside this div as a register. Now I'm going to use the template inside. So here I have given a margin bottom 3. 3 is basically, this is 16 pixel margin from the bottom. Okay, I'm using the bootstrap here. So I'll add the bootstrap CDN. And here I have given the label as an email, and class I have given a form label and given title as an email. And then after that, input type equal to email. And then we have given a class form control, name as an email, and ID also I have given email. And this is the required field. And inside the placeholder, I have given name at the rate example.com. Okay. And this is the invalid feedback class that we are using from the bootstrap in order to do the validation. Okay. So now let me do. Now I'm going to create for the other elements. So let me copy this, and we would be using password. So I'm going to give this a pwd and password, and then here also pwd, and name also I'm going to give as a pwd. So here far basically this label is associated with this input control. Okay. Now here ID I'm going to also give as a pwd, and in the placeholder I can put as a enter password, and in the invalid class please enter password. Okay. Now the other thing that we can use the re-enter password. Okay, confirm password. So here we can use for the confirm password, and let me re-password. Type would be password. So here type would be password, and let's type equal to password, name re-password, and I'm going to give the same as a ID. Okay, and here I'll put as a confirm password. Okay. And now here, if it's invalid, then we can say password didn't match. Okay. Now we can add for the mobile number as well, because mobile number is also required for the registration. So let me add for the phone here, phone, and phone type equal to tel. Okay, telephone, and here we'll give as a name phone, and ID will be also giving as a phone. Okay, and here in the placeholder we can mention enter phone number. Okay, and here phone number is not valid. Okay, I'm going to give here a regular expression as pattern here. So this pattern is going to be used for phone number, and it's going to accept the value as enter phone number in the format as plus XX, that would be the country code. Then after that we have to provide the 10-digit number. Okay, now let me format the entire page, Control A, Control K, F, and your page is going to be formatted. So now let me create another div over here, and inside the div I'm going to make a button over here. So button type equal to submit. Okay, and then we can provide the class as btn and btn primary. Okay, btn primary is being used for the button class in the bootstrap. Okay, so here I'm providing as a btn primary. Now here I'll make the text as a button as a register, and now one more button that I'll give for the sign in. Okay, so here I'll not give a button, I'll just give a link over here. So if, let me make it inside the paragraph, if already registered, and then here I'll give a link for the sign in. Okay, and so let's take an anchor tag, anchor, and here we will give as a sign in. Okay, and here we can give as a href which will goes to the sign in page. Okay, so here I'm just going for now as a sign in. Okay, and here we will give as a user sign in. Now let's run this application, npm run dev. So now server.ts is executing. So now my server is running on port 4001. So now let's open the browser here, localhost at 4001. So if you see here we have a link for the register user, but as of now we have not configured our route for this register, so it's not going to work. So now let's first configure our route. Go to the application. Here in the route we are going to create another route here for the user. Let me paste this file here and rename it as a user route. And now let's rename our index controller to user controller, and this controller we need as a user controller over here, which is not created yet. So we'll create the user controller as well, user controller dot register. Okay, because we are going to use the functionality of register, and here it should be route as a register. Okay, so now let's go to the controller folder and let's create a controller and name user controller. Okay, and this user controller, let's change the name of the class. So this would be the user controller, and it should be loading the page from user register, and let's rename this default export as a user. Okay, so now it should be working fine, and let's see what the issues with the user routes here. Okay, so basically we have not defined any register method over here. Okay, right? So it's register, so it should be working okay. And now we need to add this route to our server.ts file as well. Okay, so let's go to the server.ts file. Here we have book route, so let's create another route for user, and this would be the user route, and this user route needs to be imported from user route. This would be the user route, and it should be imported from the user route. Okay, now let's do some small changes here. It should be the folder name should be the user, not the users here. And let's see if all the routes are okay. So if you see here in this page here, in the for the user we have user here. Click on the register. So it's not rendering the register page. So let's see what is the issue. So let me go to the header page, and on the header if you see I'm just given route as a register only. So here we have to give route as a user register. Okay, hopefully this should be working now. Save it and let's see if it is working or not. Yep, so here we can see our register page, but we are not able to see our design. So let's add the bootstrap CDN. Bootstrap. So here go to the docs, and inside the docs we would be having our CDN link for CSS as well as JavaScript both. Now let's add the CSS over here. So now here we have the CDN link for CSS. So let me copy this and go to our application, and inside our layout.ejs file let's add it. Let's go back to the CDN link for the JavaScript file, and let's add it after the body section. Okay, now let's save it and see if application is running or not. Yep, now if you are seeing here our bootstrap CSS class is applied here. Now let's work a little bit on the design section. So here this register section needs to be inside a div. So let's apply some classes for that. Let's go back to the application, and inside that our layout file, here we have section. So in this section we are going to apply some classes. So let's create a div inside this section, and I'm going to give the class as a container div. Okay, now inside this container div we are going to put our body. Now let's declare this class in our style.css file. Now let's give as a display flex and then give the flex direction as column. Give justify content as a center. It will align the div in the center. The direction for this div would be the column, and we need to align all those items inside this div as a center. So we will give as a align item center, and then we can give for the width for this div as a 50%. Okay, now let's see how exactly it look like. Let's save it, refresh. Now let me give some width for the control. So here all the form control class, I'm going to apply width as a 500 pixel. Save it. So now we are seeing here, it looks nice, and all the text that we can see inside the text box. Okay, for now I'm just going to remove this footer. I'll implement it later on. So I'm just removing this footer section from here. I'll just comment it. Yeah, so now it looks better. Now similarly we can design for our sign in form. Okay, so now let's design our login form as well. So let's go to the application. Here inside the user folder itself, I'm just going to create a login form. So I'll just copy it and paste it inside this folder itself, rename, and I'll give as a sign in. Okay, sign in.ejs. Here we need user ID and password only. So here on the top I'll give as a sign in, and it would be the email, it would be the password. We don't require here for the confirm password, so let's remove it. And we don't require the phone number as well while logging, so let's remove that as well. And here we would be having as a sign in, and here we can mention as a not registered yet. So here we can ask for the registration, and here user register. Okay, now go to our header page. Here we have login, so let's change as a sign in, and here also let's change as a sign in, and we have to give this path. So we will add this route inside the user controller, so provide it as a user. Now let's add this section to the user controller. Here sign in, let's copy and paste this for sign in, and here we will use the sign in template. Okay, so hopefully it should be working fine. Now let's check, refresh it. Seems like still our application is building now. Yep, so now it's running. And here if I click on sign in, so it's not going to the user sign in. It should be user, not users. Okay, so let me see where is the issue. Go to the header page, and here we have user sign in, right? And on the sign in page, here, so it should be the user. Okay, so let's save it and see it once again. Control R to refresh this page, and now click on sign in. Still this is referring to the user sign in. Okay, so let me see once again on the registered page. Here, sorry, here we have the user sign in. So now let's save it and go back to our browser, refresh it, and click on sign in. So it's not rendering the sign in page. Let's see what is the other issue. So let's go. Here we have user controller, we have sign in. Now let's check the user route. Yep, so here we have not given the route for the sign in page, so let's give a get route for the sign in. So now, and we are going to use this sign in. Let's get it executed now. Yep, so now it's running. Let's see once again, sign in. Now it's showing the error as failed to look up user sign in. Okay, so let's see. SIGN. Okay, so here we have misspelled it here, SIGIN. So it should be SIGNIN. Okay, sign in. Hopefully it should be working. Now sign in. Yeah, so good. So now we are on the sign in page. Here we have written sing in. Okay, so there's typo. So let's see. If you want to search something in the entire page, you can search it like Control C F, and you can paste it here, so you can find it immediately where exactly the text that you want to search. Okay, so here I'll put sign in. Okay, and go to the registration page. Here we will give some space here in between sign and in. Okay, now let's save it. Now let's see if it's working or not. So yep, here we have sign in and not register it, registration. Here we should make as a register. Okay, so go to the sign in page and here register. Okay, register here. Now all the routes are working. If you click on register, it goes to the register page, and if we click on the sign in, it goes to the sign in page. And from here also, if we click on register, it goes to the register page, and click on sign in, it goes to the sign in page. Now we need this button at the right side, so let's implement the bootstrap class. Now let's add a class, bootstrap class, as a text int, and same we will implement to the register page for our register button. Okay, now let's see. So if you see here, now our sign in button at the right side, and check on the register page. On the register page also we have the registration button at the right side. Now let's work on the validation. In order to do the validation, it's very easy in Bootstrap. So we are going to implement some of the classes here in the form. First of all, we have to add the class as a needs validation. So here add as a class needs validation, and we can give action as a register, and we have to add here no validate. And I'm going to add some script over here at the end of the form section. In this JavaScript, I'm just using the query selector all with the needs validation, that the form is going to be selected. For inside all the forms, I'm checking the password and confirm password. If both values are equal here, then I'm just showing as a message as a password don't match. Okay, and this confirm password, the ID needs to be matching with the confirm password. So let's check here. Here we have repassword. Okay, so now let me change this confirm password, and confirm password. Okay, and here we have ID as a password. Let me change the this password as a pwd. Okay, now let's see if our validation is working or not. Let's refresh this page and register. Yep, so our validation is working fine. This is a required field. This is not a valid email, but if we put this is a valid email. Okay, now we need to put some password. Let me put 123, and here I'm putting 12. So password didn't match. As soon as I put 3, password is going to be match. Here we are required to provide the phone number, but this should not be required until unless if user is not providing the detail, it should be fine. Okay, so now let's see, this field should not be required field. So this phone number, we can remove this field. Okay, so once user is providing the value and that is not matching with this pattern, then the error should come. Okay, here let me refresh this page. So if you see here, now we are not getting the error over here. Okay, now if user puts some value over here, so phone number is not valid. So user needs to provide in the format of +91 and then mobile number. Okay, now here this email is working fine. 123, it's also working fine. 123, it's also working fine. Okay, now this is not 123. Yeah, 123. So now our validation is done for our register page. Now go to the login page and do for the validation. So here and now go to the our sign in page. Here we'll add the class here, action would be sign in, and then we'll add a class as a needs validation, class needs validation, and we'll give the no validate. Okay, and at the end of the form section, we need to add this script for all our validation. So until or unless it's not validated, it's not moving forward. Now let's save it and run the application, refresh it. So now our validation is working for sign-in page as well. Okay, now here one thing that we can do, this code that we are using multiple times here. So now we are going to move this code to our common section inside our script folder. Okay, so here I'm going to add a new file here, validation.js. Okay, and I'm going to add this code over here. Okay, now let's close the terminal. Now we need to give the reference of this validation.js file to our EJS pages. Okay, so the best place to provide this validation.js reference is to be layout.js, because this file is going to be utilized throughout the application for the validation purpose. Okay, so now I'm going to add the reference for the validation file script, and then we have to give the source. Script folders are available inside the public folder, so we can directly use scripts, and then we have to give our validations. Okay, validations.js file. Now close the tag, and we need to remove this code from the sign in form. Okay, so let's remove this. Now let's save. Let's run this. Let's refresh this page. Now click on sign in. So it's not doing the validation. Why? This is expected. Let me tell you the reason. Because we have added our type validation script over here, right? So what exactly happening here? All the components is getting loaded, and then after that our script file is getting downloaded. Okay, so this validation.js is having the dependency on our components. Okay, so what we have to do, we have two options over here. Okay, the first one, that we can load the file after rendering up our all the components. So here in the last, after body section, I'm going to write this script, and now let's see. So refresh this, now sign in. So now if you see here, our validation is working as expected. So now let me give some valid email, a@a, that's working, and password I'm giving that's a required field, so I'm giving 123. Okay, so our validation is working for sign in page as well as our register page both. Okay, and now here we have another option. Okay, if we want to give here at the top in the head section only, then we can write it as a differ. Okay, so once you write as a differ, then these files is going to be downloaded at the end of the execution once all the components are being rendered. Okay, now this should be working as expected. So let's see, refresh this, go to sign in. Yep, so this is working as expected. Okay, now if we give some valid user ID, a@a, and password as a 123. Okay, and if we sign in, so it goes to the post user sign in page. This page is not working because we have not configured our post method for the sign in. Okay, and it would be the same for the register as well. If you are going to give some valid email ID over here, @a, password 123, and let's give the confirm password 123 and click on the register. So it's going to be register, but we have not implemented our register functionality as well. So now in the next section, we are going to implement the register functionality. While registering the user, we are going to save this user email, password and phone number information to the database, and then after that, with the same user ID, we are going to sign in. Okay, and while saving our password, we are going to encrypt that password using crypto, and we will generate our tokens, and on the basis of that token, user will be able to access all these routes. Okay, for the authentication, we are going to use the JSON web token. Now let's start. Before that, let's commit all of our code what we have done so far. So let's open another terminal as a git bash. Let's check the git status. So we have views, user, and we have user route, script folder, as well as user controller, and all these files are modified. Okay, so now let's add all these files. Git add dot. Okay, so it's going to add all those files, and now git commit. But before that, currently we are working on v3 branch. So now let me create another branch, v4, git branch -m as a v4. Okay, now we are on the v4 branch. If you see here, as of now I'm on the v4 branch. Now let's commit the code, git commit, and what we have done in this section is style, layouts, header, user, routes, and scripts. Okay, now git push to the origin head. Okay, yep, so all the code have been pushed. Now let's verify it once again. Here, open our GitHub. Here in our library management, yep, v4 had recently pushed, and now go to the v4 branch, and if we see in src, we should be having public, and inside that we should be having scripts. Yep, so file have been moved there. Now let's proceed for the next section. Okay, now we are required to register the user in the database. So let's close all these files from here. All these all are not needed as of now. Let's go to the user controller. Here we have to get the value from the browser and then encrypt it and save into the database. So let's do it. So here let's create a function as register user, and in this register user, this would be the post method. Okay, now here let's get what the data we are getting in the body, const body. Inside body, that we would be getting the value from the request.body. Okay, now let's console and see what all the values that we are getting into the body. And now let's add this register user method to our router, user routes. So here we have, let's add this method as a register user, and here we will give the register, but this time it would be for the post method. So post. Now let's run this application, npm run dev. Now our server is running. Now let's see, localhost 4001, and here we'll go to the register, and here we will register as q@q123 and register. Okay, so as soon as we click on the register, it should be logging the value. So if you see here, we are not getting the value as request.body, we are getting as a blank. So let's see why we are getting the request body as a blank. Now let's go to our server.ts file. Here we have not used the body parser, so let's install the body parser as well. Let's open a terminal, npm install body parser. Okay, so body parser has been installed. Now let's import it. Import body parser from body parser. Okay, so now let's configure this body parser. Here app.use, and inside this we will give the body parser url encoded, and in this URL encoded we'll pass the configuration as limit, and limit would be, let's give as a 10 MB and give it extended as a true. Okay, now let's see if we are getting the value in the body or not. So already server is running. Now let's go to the register, and here QQ and register. Okay, 1, 2, 3. So if we click on register, then after that, yep. So now if you see here, we are getting the value in the body. Okay, so we are getting email, password, confirm password, and phone. Okay, once all the information are validated and correct, then after that we can post the information to the server. Okay, so now once click the register button, here we are able to get the value. Now what we are going to do, we are going to encrypt this password, and then after that we will store it into the database. Okay, so first of all, let's create a user model, because as of now we have not created the user model. So let's go to the model first. Here I'm going to copy this author one. Let's rename it as a user model. Okay, so in this user model we are just give as a replace with author with the user, and here we will replace author with the user model, iuser model, iuser, and here we will use iuser. Okay, and here we are going to change the fields for the user. Now this should be as an email, and it would type would be string, and required will be true, and we will give the indexing on this. So we will give the index true as well for this field. Okay, and then we will give the unique also, because email that we are going to store uniquely into the database. Okay, so we will give unique as well, unique true as well. Now let's give for the password. So here we have email, and then we have to give for the password. Okay, so here password, and password would be type string and required true. We are not going to have the indexing and unique for the password. And now we should be having phone number as well. So let's change phone, and it would be type string and won't be as a required field. Okay, so we'll remove the required, and by default we should be having a role as well, because eventually we have to check the role also in order to show that authentication feature. So here I'm going to give as a role would be type string, and the default value that we are going to pass as a default value would be as a user. Okay, default value would be as a user. Okay, so now our user model is created. Everything looks good. Here Mongo, I don't know, remove this Mongo. Now we are good to create our register route. So go to the user controller. Here let destructure this request.body. So here we will give as a const. Now here const, and we will give as a email, and then we will give as a pwd, and then we will give as a phone, right? And that's all going to be destructured from request.body. Okay, now we need to add all these information to the our user object. Okay, so now let's create the user const user equal to, and we will create the new user object, new user, and inside this user we are going to pass all this information. Okay, and this user is going to come from user model. So let's fix it. User, let's import it here. Import user from model user. Okay, now here we will give the email, and then we will give the pwd, and then we will give the phone. Okay, and role would be by default as a user. Now we are required to save this user to the database. Okay, but before that we have to encrypt this password, because we cannot save the password as it is that we are getting from the user. So first of all we are required to encrypt it. So now we will work for the encryption of the password. So for this encryption we would be requiring crypto. So let's install the crypto module, npm install crypto. Now crypto has been installed. So let's import the crypto here. Import crypto from crypto. Okay. So in order to encrypt the value, so we would be needing three things: secret key, algorithm, and initialization vector. Okay. So now let's create our environment file. Inside our environment file, let's create all these three variables. So first of all, we need secret key, just mention as a key, and then we would be needing as a algorithm. So just mention as a algo, and then after that we would be needing as a initialization vector. Okay. So now let's get the value for the key and initialization vector. So we'll go to the command prompt as a node command prompt here, and here we will type node. Now here we will write as a require, and now we will give the crypto and then random bytes 16-bit, and then .toString, and we will convert into the hex. Okay. Now it's going to generate random key over here. Let's copy this and give this value inside the key, and then after that we will give the initialization vector key for this. So initialization vector, let's create a 8-bit. Now copy this. Now we are going to use the algorithm as a here AES 256 CBC. Okay, we have several algorithms, but for this particular demonstration we are using this AES 256 CBC. Now let's go back to our user controller. Here let's all these values. So key equal to process.env.key, right? And we would be having our initialization vector. So iv equal to process.env.iv, and we would be using the algo process.env.algo. Okay. Now we are having all these three key information over here. Now let's create a method for the encryption as encrypt data. So now here let's create a method static encrypt data, and we are passing this in this encrypt data as a data that would be type of string, and that would be coming, I mean, like password or anything which we want to encrypt, and here I'm returning as a any. Now let's const, let's create a cipher, and we have imported crypto. So from crypto object we are going to use the create cipher, crypto.create cipher initialized vector. Now here we have to pass all the values. So first of all we have to pass the algorithm, which algorithm that we are going to use. So we are going to use as a this dot algo. This algo is not accessible because we have not defined as a static over here. So let's define all our variable as a static. Okay, so now we should be having this dot algo here, and then after that we have to provide this dot our encryption key. So we are going to provide here key, and then we have to provide our initialized vector. So here we have our initialized vector. Why this algo, right? So here it's showing as no overload matches. This called overload 1 to 4. Okay, so I believe this is the issues with the type. So now let's give as a type over here as any. So it should be, yep, algo is fine. Let's give the type as a key as well as any, and give the type for the initialization vector as well any. Okay, so now it should be fine. Yeah, now it should be fine. Now let's get the encrypted value, and the encrypted value would be encrypted, and that would be equal to cipher.update. We would be having a method as a update, and inside this update we would be passing our data. Okay, so whatever the data that we are getting from here, okay, we will pass our data that we have to encrypt, and then after that we have to pass which encoding that we have to encode. Okay, so we are going to use as a base 64, and then after that we have to pass our output encoding. Okay, and that would be our UTF-8. Okay, now let's add the final base 64 value to the encrypted value. Okay, so let's here add encrypted plus equal to cipher.final, and here we have to give our base 64 encoding. Okay, and now return this encrypted value. Okay, return encrypted. So now this is going to return the encrypted value. Now in the same way we are going to create a decrypt data. So once it's getting encrypted, then we have to decrypt while loading the user information from the database. So now let's decrypt the data, and we are going to pass here the data, and then here we are going to create a decipher, and in this create decipher we have a method as a decipher dot create decipher, and in this also we are going to pass the algorithm key and cipher key value here, in key and initialization vector value over here. Now here we have decrypted, and here we have a decipher dot update, and here the same as that we are passing our data base 64 and UTF input and output encoding, and then here we have return let decrypted cipher dot final decrypted decipher dot final base 64. Okay, and now here we can return this decrypted value. So now we have written the both of the function, encrypted data and decrypt data. So now let's use this function over here. So before storing this password to the user, we are going to decrypt the value. So here we will give, so before storing this password to the database, we have to encrypt it. So let's encrypt the value over here for the password. Let's give here const password, and that would be this dot encrypt data, and in the data that we are going to password, simply pwd. Okay, now here we are having the encrypted value as a password. Then let's pass the password as of now, and now let's console the body and see if it's working or not. So already our server is running. Let's go back and click on the register. Now here q already is there, confirm password 123. Now let's register here. Cannot change encoding. Okay, this is caused by either a bug in node.js or incorrect uses of node.js internal. So basically here we have a mistake, as we have given for the encoding as a base 64. Here you should be having UTF-8. So and base 64 needs to be as a input encoding. Okay, now let's encrypt the value once again. So now here we have password 123, and let's register. Basically here we have to log our user, so we can see what exactly the value we are getting in our user. Okay, now let's register 123, and if you see here, as of now we are getting the encrypted value from the user. Okay, this is our email and this is our encrypted password, and role by default is going as a user because we have configured default role as a user. Okay, and this is the ID. Okay, this is the ID for the user. Now we are good to store this information to the database. Okay, so now let's use the try catch block. Now here create a const new user. Okay, and that would be user dot save, and it's always going to return a promise. So because once we are using our saving or getting the data from the database, it's always return a promise. So here we are going to use await, and once we are using await, then we have to use our async. Okay, now once our user successfully added to the database, then let's log the value, console.log user added successfully, and which user is added. So let's log the value of the user as well. So new user. Okay, because it's going to return the value as a new user. Now if user added successfully, then we have to redirect to the login page, from register page to the login page. Okay, so simply just response.render to the user sign in page. Okay, now let's still our server is running. Now its server is ready. So now go to the register page, and here q@q123, I'm giving password 123 and then register. Okay, now it's immediately redirected to the sign in page. So it means our user got created successfully. Now let's see our log. So if you see here, in the log also we can see user added successfully, and this is ID, and this is created and updated add. This created and updated add is coming from our model. If you see here, inside the model we have given timestamp as a true. Okay, so once we have given the timestamp true, then created and updated add is going to be added. Okay, so now let's verify into the database as well. Let's open our MongoDB cluster. Inside our MongoDB cluster, open the browse collection. We having a library management, and inside the user. So if you see here, the value is not being stored into the user. Now let's see book schema, book collections, author collections. So if you see here, the value is getting stored into the author collection. So let's see, might be we are referring to the author somewhere. So this is iUser model, here we have written as a author. Okay, so this should be the user. That's the reason it's referring to the author. Okay, now let's test it once again. Here register and confirm password 123. Now register, and it went up to here. Okay, so now let's see into the database. Now see the user. Yeah, so great. So now user information is getting stored into the user collection. Okay, so if you see here, email ID q@q, and we have this password, and phone number we have not given. Role by default it is coming as a user, that we will use later on. And let's delete this information from the author because it's not needed over here. And if you see here, the password is also getting encrypted. Now let's flip to the Visual Studio. Here on the user controller, now similarly we will do for the sign in functionality. Okay, now if you see here, user went to the sign in. Now once user click on the sign in page, okay, then he should be able to go to the home page. Okay, so as of now we have not added the functionality for sign in, so it's not going to work. So now let's add the functionality for the sign in. Okay, and once user will sign in, then we are going to generate the JSON web token, JWT token. Okay, and that JWT token is going to be stored on cookies. Okay, and then for further all the user request, user is going to access web token from the cookies. Okay, so we will see all those things. Now let's start. Go to our user controller page, and here we will write for the similarly as we have written the register user. I'm just going to make another function over here for sign in user. Okay, and here we have the request.body, and from this page we are going to have only request email and password. So I'm going to remove this phone. So here we would be having the password, and we would be requiring this password as a decrypt data. So I'll decrypt it. So now we will be having here decrypted password. Let's remove this terminal. And now here we would find out the user ID, and first of all we would be finding the user on the basis of the provided email. Okay, so now let's remove all those things here. So now let's first find out the user. So here we would be having our user, and we would be using .find1, and inside this find1 that we would be passing our query. So here we are using for the email, and we will pass this our email. Okay, and this needs to be enclosed with a curly bracket. Okay, here we will write as a registered user. Okay, and now let's see registered user. Okay, so now we'll try to find out first of all the user. Now let's run this. So it's already running. Now go to our page here. Once we will click on the sign in page, it won't go because we have not added our route yet. So let's add our route first. So this sign in user needs to be added to our route. So in this register, in this user, here we will add for the sign in user, and here we will use for the sign in user. Okay, and that would be the post method. Now let's test it. If we click on this sign in, let's see, wrong final block length. So this error is coming inside our decrypt the data. Let's see what is the issues we have with our decrypt data. Here we are passing algo key and decrypted, return decrypted. Since we have given a here encoding as a base 64 because we are decrypting now, so it should be UTF-8. Okay, so now it should be working. Now let's go back. Let's see if our server is running. Yeah, server is ready now. Now let's sign in. So once we sign in, still we are getting the error wrong final block length. So it looks good everything here. Now let's see in our sign in user. So let's first of all see what exactly we are getting in our request body. So now let's console log here, and inside that we are going to log request body. Okay, so let's see what we are getting here. Our server is getting ready. Yep, so now it's running. Let's see. Now if you see here, okay, so we are getting email as and password 123. Okay, so as of now we are not getting the encrypted password here, so that's the reason it's getting the issues. Okay, so first of all we have to find out the user. So we should not decrypt the password over here, right? First of all we have to find out the user, and then after that we have to get the password and decrypt it. Okay, so now let's find out the user first. Ready now. Now let's sign in. Once we sign in, then yep, so if you see here, now we are getting the user, and we are getting the user password, phone, role, all the details from the database. Okay, so now we have to encrypt this password, this password that we are getting from the database. Now let's do that. Now let me give as a user here, user, and now we will get the password for this user. So if we are getting the user, then we have to find out the password. Okay, const password equal to user dot password. Okay, so now here we have the encrypted password, and this should be, now let's give a type as a any over here. So we would be having user dot password here. Now we need to decrypt this password. Okay, so let's decrypt this password. This dot decrypt data, and this user password is encrypted. Now here we would be having a decrypted password. Okay, and now here we will check if pwd, this is the password that we are getting from the user, is going to be equal with this password. Okay, so we can see as a type as a decrypt password. Okay, so this is the decrypt password. If it's equal, then we have to write console log as a valid user, and it would be a valid user, and then we have to response.redirect to the home page. Okay, response.redirect at the home page, okay. Now let's run this, and if we have to give the condition as else, then we have to response.log invalid user. Okay, and we have to show the information, but as of now we will redirect to user sign in page only. So we will just render this user sign in, okay, because it's invalid user, and we will show the error message later on. Now let's wait for the server to run. Yep, server is running now. Let's test it. So here we have given q@q123 sign in, and once we click sign in, we are going to redirect to the home page. Okay, now let's go back, and we are going to give the wrong password 1231, and then we are going to redirect it to the sign in page only. Okay, so if you see here, if we have given password as a 1231, then it's showing as an invalid user, and on the other hand, if you have given the correct password, so it's redirected to the home page. Okay, now our functionality for our authentication is working fine, but if user want to access for all these author book contents every time he has to, so it's not required every time to check the database, okay, if user is valid or not. So in order to do that, we are using JSON web token. Okay, and that JSON web token is going to be stored into the cookies, and next time when user is trying to access to the author's book or contact or any other resources, then automatically it's checking from the cookies if the valid user or not. Okay, on the basis of that JSON JWT tokens, user is getting authenticated. Now let's implement for the JWT tokens. Now in order to implement JWT tokens, we have to install JSON Web Token module. So let's install that. npm install JSON Web Token. Okay, JSON Web Token. Meanwhile it's installing, let's go and import it. Import JWT from JSON Web Token. Okay, so now JWT token has been installed. So could not find a declaration for module JSON Web Token. Let's install its type as well. Yep, so error has been removed now. So now let's implement the JWT token. Here, once user is successfully logged in, then we are going to create the token. So here we will create as a const access token. Okay, and that we are going to create a token from a method generate access token. We will create this method. Okay, and we are passing the detail inside that user. Okay, that user that we have received from the find one method, and this user is successfully logged in user. Okay, now let's create this method generate access token, static generate access token, and inside that we are passing user, and from here return what we are going to return. We are going to return the token. Okay, so token from JWT, we have a method dot sign JWT dot sign, so we will use the sign, and then we are going to pass what exactly we are going to sign. So we are going to sign the user. Okay, and then we are going to pass the key. Okay, I'll tell you that how to generate this key, and then we have to pass the expiring time. So now let's pass the expired time as well. So it's going to be expiring. Let's give as of now for 30 seconds. Okay, now we need this key. Okay, let me generate a secret key. Go to your environment file. Here we will mention as a access token secret, or just mention as a secret key, and that would be, now let me open another terminal. Now let's generate the key over here. Here we are going to use node, and once we are in the node prompt, then we are going to use require and then crypto and random byte 64-bit, and then we have to use the dot 2 and in the form of the hex. Okay, now let's see, we should be receiving a key over here. Oh, so here we are missing the colon, so let me give one more colon here. Yep, so we have received this key. Now let's copy and paste it here. So now we have our secret key, so we are going to use this secret key over here. Okay, now const key equal to process.env dot secret key, right? And this key is going to be passed over here. Okay, and we don't have key value, so we should be passing it as a blank value. Now this sign in method is going to generate the token, okay, JWT token. So now here we should be receiving this access token, okay. So once token is generated, now this, let's console it, console.log, and then we have to use the access token, okay. And once this action token is generated, we have to store this access token somewhere, right? Either we can store in our local storage. So local storage is not a safest option that we have, but yes, we can store in our cookies. I'm going to store in cookies, okay. Response.cookies, and here in the cookies I'm going to store this access token. So I have to give the cookies key name. So I'll give as it is, like access token, and then I'll pass the access token inside that, and the second parameter that we have access token, and then after that we have to give the how long is this access token needs to be valid, okay. So we have to provide the max age for this token. So we can give here max age, and here I'm going to give as 900,000, which is going to be equivalent to 15 minutes, okay. 900,000, and we have to provide if this HTTP only true or false. So here we are going to give as a HTTP only true, okay. Now we have stored our access token to the cookies. Now let's see if it's working or not. Let's open another terminal. Let's run npm run dev. Yep, so now our server is up and running. So now let's see, refresh this page. Now go to the sign in, and here let's open the developer tool as well. So in the developer tool, let's open the network. Now let's click on the sign in. So once user click on sign in, so if you see, this is the valid user and this is the token is getting generated, okay. And now let's see if that token is getting stored in the cookies or not. So if you come here and inside the application section, and here we have the cookies, okay, storage inside the cookies. So here we have storage multiple options, like we can store in our local storage, we can store in session, okay, but here I'm storing in a cookie. So if you see this cookies, so if you see here this cookies, okay, so here we have stored our JWT token in cookies. Now once user is trying to access to the other route, then we have to check every time if that user is authenticated or not. So but we don't want to do that every time. We don't have to check the database. So we have to check from the if this JWT token is valid or not. So already we have stored in our cookies. So we have to create a middleware, and that middleware needs to be injected before all of our route, and we are going to verify from this token itself. If this token is valid, then user will be valid. If this token is going to be expired, then user authentication is going to be failed, okay. So now let's do that. So now let's create a middleware. So I'm going to create a folder at the root level, src level, middleware, and inside the middleware I'm going to create a file as a verify token, okay. Now here import first of all the JWT token, import JWT from JSON web token, okay. And here I'm going to create a method as a verify token, okay. And in this verify token, and for any middleware we should be having request, response, and next, okay. So now let's create a request, and I'm going to create a response parameter over here. I'm passing all the types as any. Now let me create a try catch block, because we are going to read the cookies and verify from the JWT token, okay. So now let's create a try catch block here. Let me get the access for the token, JWT token, from the cookies, okay. Const access token, and that is going to be equal to request.cookies, okay. So we are getting from the request.cookies, and the value that we have given as a access token, same, okay. So we are going to take it from the access token. So now here we could be receiving that the value from the cookies, our JWT token. Now we need to verify this, okay, if this particular key is valid or not, okay. So in JWT token we have a method as a JWT verify method, okay. So now let's use the JWT verify method. In order to create the token we have sign method, and in order to verify the token we have a verify method, okay. So here verify, and in the verify method we have to pass first of all access token, okay. So this the access token that we have to pass it first, and then after that we have to pass our key, okay, the same key that we have passed to generate the token key. So here
const key, that is going to be process dot env dot secret key, right, that we have created, and this key is going to be passed as a and if we don't have the value, then we have to pass it as a blank. Okay, now once it's verified, then we have to pass a callback functions. Okay, we create a callback function here, and in this callback function we have a two parameters, error and data. Okay, if in case of any error comes while verification, then it goes to the error, and if it successfully gets completed verification, then after that it goes to the we will get the data. Okay, so now we will pass the error, and then after that the second parameter would be our data. Okay, so we are going to pass as a data here, and now here we will be able to access our error and data. So if any error, okay, then we have to, as of now I'm just sending a status as a 403 response.send status as 403. okay, it's a forbidden. User is having the valid token, but it's not authenticated. Okay, it could be expired or it could be tempered. Okay, and if else, if we have the data, and inside the data we have the user, right, then we have to pass this data to the request user. So here I am going to pass this data to the request user and data dot user. Okay, and once this is successfully done, then we have to pass this to the next middleware. So we have to use the next method over here, because this is I'm using as a middleware. Okay, so now this verifies token is method is created, and in case of any other error comes, so here let me log the error, and we have to log the error. Okay, and once it's done, we have to export this method as well. So we will use the export default, and then we have to use the verify token, this method. Okay, control A, control K, F. Okay, so our file is formatted. Now this verify token needs to be checked for our each and every route. Okay, so as of now I'm just going to implement for the index route. So let me go to the index route and index route, and here I'm going to use the verify token implement as a middleware. Okay, verify token, and we have to import this verify token. Let's import it. Verify token from, we have written in the middleware, so we have to go one directory up, so dot dot / and then we have to give the middleware, and then we have to take the verify token. Okay, so now we would be having the access over here for the verify token. So now whenever user will call that index route, okay, so this verify token is getting executed before calling this get index method. Okay, now let's test it. So our server is still running. Now go to the sign in. So here once user is, let me just delete this existing one. So once user is sign in, access token is generated. Okay, and now once user is trying to use the home page, okay, home page is not redirecting to the index page. So let's see. Oh, so here we are getting the error, cannot read property of undefined access token. Okay, because we have not used the cookies parser. Okay, so go to the user controller. Here we have to use the cookies parser as well. Okay, so now let's, since we are using the cookies parser inside the verified token, here we are using the cookies, so we have to use the cookies parser in our server.ts file. Okay, so here I'm going to import the cookies parser, import cookie parser from cookies parser. So far we have not installed the cookies parser, so let's install the cookies parser as well, npm install cookie parser. Now let's add the type of this cookies parser. Now let's add this cookie parser as a middleware, app.use, and here we are going to use the cookies parser inside this. Okay, now we should be able to get the cookies. Okay, so now let's see, save this. Still our application is yet to run. Yep, so now our server is up and running. Let's see. So let me delete this token first and sign in. So now if you see that access token is generated and it's being stored inside the cookies, and now we are able to redirect to the home page. Okay, so if user click on the home page, suppose that we have on a register page, but user is already signed in. Okay, and user is going to click on the home page, so he would be able to route to the home page because still user is valid. Now let's wait for the 30 seconds, since we have given in the application as a 30 seconds our for the JSON web token. So after 30 seconds we won't be able to see the information, right? Now it's showing the error as a forbidden because our JWT token is expired for now. Cookies is still valid, but JWT token is expired, so we won't be able to access further route. Now once user is logged in, okay, then we should not be able to see this register and sign in method. We should be able to see here as a sign out, okay, and until or unless user is not logged in, till that time we should not see this home, author, book and contact, okay. So our first link should be register and sign in, and once user is signed in, then after that we would be able to see all these routes and sign out method, okay. So now let's implement that. So now let's go to the header template. So here in our views, in the partial, we are using the header.js, okay. So now here we are going to check if our user is logged in or not. So here we will give as a condition if inside our anchor tag, if, and the user is, we have to check our user, okay. So we are using the locals user, okay, because we are going to pass this user while rendering, okay. So we will use this locals.user is available or not. If it's not available, then we have to show as a register and sign in, okay. So now let's close this tag and put this curly bracket inside the tag, okay. Now if user is not logged in, then we have to show this register and sign in method, okay. So let me cut it from here and paste inside user is not logged in, okay. And if user is logged in, then we have to be right inside the else condition. So this is the closing tag for this bracket, curly bracket, and this is opening for the else, and this is closing for the else, okay. Now here we would be having all other routes because user is logged in, as well as we would be having as a sign out, okay. Here I'm going to create a route as a sign out from the user, and this sign out that we are required to post, okay. So we are going to create inside a form. So here we'll create a form, and that method that we are going to put as a post, and action would be user sign out, okay. And this complete route that we are passing as a action, okay. And inside this we are going to pass this our anchor tag, and when once user click on this particular anchor tag, then form needs to be submit, okay. So we have to be submit this on click of this sign out link, okay. So we have to give we have to call the JavaScript, and we are using the here jQuery, okay. So in order to find the form and then submit, okay. And now once user click on this sign out button, let's comment it. Once user click on sign out button, then our cookies needs to be deleted, okay. User needs to be redirected to the sign in page. So now let's implement this sign out functionality. Go to our user controller. Here inside user controller we have a sign in user, same as it is we are going to use as a sign out, okay. So let me just copy this, paste. We are going to use as a sign out, and inside this function sign out, let me remove all those things. So inside this we have to remove our cookies, okay. In order to remove the cookies, we have a method as a clear cookies, and we have to give our cookies name, okay, that cookies that we want to remove. So here what the cookies that is access token, okay. This is the cookies that we have created, okay, for our JWT token. And then after that user needs to be redirected to the sign in page. So let me just response.render here to the user sign in, okay. user sign in. Okay, and now once we are rendering our index page, we have to pass the logged in user information, right? Then after that, user will be able to, from here we would be able to get the data from locales for the user. Okay, so now let's go to our index controller. Here we are just rendering the index, okay, but we are not passing the user information. So now already we have added in our, if you see here, verify token, we have added request user, this data user that we are getting, we have already inserted the value. So this value we would be able to get inside our index route, okay, our index controller. Okay, so now let me create a user over here, const user, and this would be, we are getting from the request dot user. Okay, we are not getting the user because we have given as a request type here, so we are going to just give it as any type, and then this user needs to be passed inside our template. Okay, so here we will we will pass inside the curly bracket user, and then we will pass this user details. Okay, so this user is going to be passed inside the header, okay, for the locals. Okay, now let's see if it's working or not. Let me refresh this page, ready or not. So still it's running, and we forgot to add our sign out route here. So we have added in our user controller sign out, but we have not added in our user routes. Okay, so here we have to add our sign out functionality for the user routes as well. Okay, sign out, and here we are using sign out. Okay, now it should be working. Let's wait for the server to be run. So now server is up and running. Let's see. So if you see here, as of now we are not seeing the other routes, but yeah, the style is not being applied to the register and sign in. So now let's see what we are missing there. Now let's go to the header.ejs file. Yeah, because this class is not being applied because everything is moved out from ULLI link. So let me push everything inside the UL. So now it should be working fine. Now let's see, refresh this page. Okay, so now user is not logged in. So you can see we are seeing only register and sign in. So if user clicked on sign in, user will be able to sign in, and user clicked on register, user will be able to register. Okay, so now let's try to log in the user. So once user is logged in, then after that we would be able to see the other routes here for the home, author, books, contact, and sign out. Once user clicked on the home page, user will be able to go to the home page, right? As of now we have not implemented author, book, and contacts, so user won't be able to go to the author, book, and contacts. But yes, once user is signed out, then user will be able to move to the sign in page. So now here I clicked on the sign out functionality is not working because we have not added our library for the jQuery. So now let's add reference for the jQuery as well. Now go to our layouts page. If you see here we have added our bootstrap bundle. Now let me add the CDN scripts, CDN for our jQuery, and then popper, and then we have added the bootstrap. Okay, now let's control A, control KF. So our entire file is going to be formatted. Okay, now let's see, we have to log in once again, sign in, and now sign out. So once user signed out, then after that, if you see here right side, we were having the cookies, right? Let me log in. See here, now we are having the cookies, our JWT token. As soon as user signed out, our cookies got deleted. Now user further won't be able to access the other routes. Now here one more thing, if you click on the sign in, you can see here our JWT token, and this token can be viewed by anyone easily. If someone get this token, they can see it. Let me go to the jwt.io, and here if you just paste our JWT, you can see all the information from the user. But still here password is encrypted, so nobody will get to know what is the password, but yeah, other information is coming over here. So this is not a best practice. We should be always storing only few information, not the password, phone number, all those information shouldn't be stored inside the JWT token. Okay, so we would be storing only ID, email, and role only, which are going to be used further. Okay, so now let's use only ID, email, and role, because here we are using password and phone. That could be the sensitive information for the user, which should not be shared with anyone. So now we are going to use only ID, email and role, okay, inside this our JWT token. Now let's go to our user controller where we are generating our generate access token. So here if you see, we are passing the entire information from the user. So now we are going to pass this user information. So here we are going to use as a const, and we are going to use as a ID that we are getting from the user information as underscore ID, and then we are having email and role, okay, and let's make it as a underscore user, okay. So this is going to be destructure from the users, okay. Now here let me create another variable over here, const user type of any, and we are going to pass as a ID, email and role, okay, and then pass this user inside this sign in method. Here we have comma, okay. So now we would be able to see only ID, email and role inside our JWT tokens. Now server is up. Let's see. Sign in and sign in. Now if we see this JWT token, now this is smaller, and if we try to get the value, now we are seeing only ID, email and role. So this is always best practice. We should not store the sensitive information inside this our JWT tokens. We have to use only ID, email or roles, okay, very few information. Now further we are going to implement our author and book and contact route, okay. So let's start.
Now let's commit all the code that what we have done so far. I'm going to open a git bash terminal. Let's check git status. These files that we have to be commit. As of now we are working on v4 branch. Let me create a new branch as a v5. Now we are in v5 branch. Now let's add all these files. Git add dot. So it's going to add all the files. Now git commit -m that we have to give the message, and inside the message that we are going to give as index user header updated. Now git push. I think we have to just give git push origin and don't have to pass. Yeah, let's see. Yep, it's working now. It's already committed to the branch v5. Now let's see. Opening my GitHub, and then here library management, and inside this if you see, and this is the 5th branch we have, and inside if you see, we have views, we have partial, we have header, okay. So all these files have been committed. Now let's move ahead with the author and book routes, okay.